Welcome to part 6 of our Western Queensland trip. The following video is a collection of photographs I took to show our family and friends what we have seen, what the country was like, and the places we have visited. I have also tried to show the distances we have travelled. We leave Betoota, a one-hotel town on a vast Gibber plain that was once a customs post until Federation in 1901. Collecting tolls for stock that were being moved to South Australia, and also a Cobb & Co change station. Our camp on Brown's Waterhole had been so peaceful, with an amazing sunset and sunrise. An artist's palette doesn't seem to have the range of colours that are displayed in nature. Then again, I think each individual sees the colours differently, making it truly unique and magical. Just a short journey from Betoota, we stopped at the Dreamtime Serpent, a work of art representing a series of pathways travel through country to connect the river systems of the Channel Country of the Diamantina Shire, made using stone and gibbers from the region. We had spectacular views just as the sun was cresting the top of the hill. The tranquility and peacefulness was incredible. The Diamantina River was named by William Landsborough in 1866. He named the river after Lady Diamantina Brown, née Roma, who was the wife of St George Fergusson Brown, the first Governor of Queensland. The Diamantina's main tributaries are Ferris Creek and the Western and Main Rivers. The river flows 900 kilometres southwest en route to Lake Eyre in South Australia. The Diamantina runs along the northern and eastern rim of a roughly circular zone measuring about 130 kilometres, suggesting that it could have resulted from an asteroid strike some 300 million years ago. In times of flood, the Diamantina River and the Georgina River from the north merge to drain along the channel of Warburton Creek southwestward to Lake Eyre. Like many of Australia's giant rivers, the Diamantina has its source in shallow hills, spreads majestically wide when full, and ends in an inland swamp. Most of the basin of the Diamantina is very flat. Even the highest points in the northeast do not reach 500 metres above sea level. The river is little more than an expanse of dusty channels, with isolated waterholes in most years. As it has no main channel, rather it is a series of wide and relatively shallow channels, but flooding rains changed that scene. In the 1870s, Queensland cattle drovers took livestock to southern markets at Wodonga and Melbourne along the Strzelecki track, a route pioneered by the cattle rustler Harry Radford. The Strzelecki skirted the eastern edge of the Sturt-Stony Desert and passed through Inaminka. The dry stages were too long, and an inland alternative west of the desert was tried. The alternative kept near the Diamantina watercourse, which crossed where Birdsville was settled, and the track went on to Maree on the Port Adelaide to Oodnadatta railway line, with the railway terminated at Corn up until 1882, but was extended to Oodnadatta in 1891. The alternative stock route and the Adelaide market were clearly preferred, and Birdsville had both a store and a hotel by 1882. The present hotel is a replica of the one dating from 1885. In 1886, the Diamantina Local Government Division was established. The Diamantina Shire, including the towns of Betoota, Birdsville and Betoota, has an area of 94,832 square kilometres and is in the extreme west of Queensland, with Popal Corner, the intersection of the Northern Territory, South Australia and Queensland borders, as its southwesterly point, with the administrative centre in Betoota. The Shire is twice the size of Denmark and is the second largest local government area in size in Queensland, behind the Cook Shire with approximately 100,000 square kilometres. Outback Queensland is a land of extremes. Droughts and floods are facts of life. But unfortunately, nature is hard to predict. Few rarely get it right, but the outback spirit persists. Some families have lived in the area for generations, with no thought of leaving the land, happy to continue working through the challenges they are faced each and every day. True outback spirit. Just outside of Birdsville, we checked out the legendary Birdsville Racecourse, with the races being held in September each year in aid of the Royal Flying Doctor Service of Australia and other worthwhile causes in the area. The first races were run in the town way back in the spring of 1882, when a group of 150 owners, managers and stockmen came together on the South Australia and Queensland border for the first and unofficial Birdsville Races event. Originally, horses were born and bred on the outback stations and were trained for racing, with the riders either station owners or workers, many of whom were Aboriginal. The races are a major event in the district, not just as the Melbourne Cup of the Outback, but also a chance for those living in this remote area with an interest in horse racing to enjoy racing and the social interactions that happen on such an entertaining weekend. The late George Morton, owner of the neighbouring property to Birdsville, Pandy Station, trained 5 cup winners. In the late 1970s, the Birdsville race weekend received a boost from a most unlikely source when in 1978 the then sitting Prime Minister Malcolm Fraser made the pilgrimage to Birdsville and thrust the carnival into the national psyche. From the racecourse, we made our way into Birdsville to have a look around before making camp on the town common beside the Diamantina River. The first European visitors to the area were recorded in 1844, when explorer Charles Sturt led expeditions to the area. It wasn't until the mid-1870s that pastoralists began to occupy this semi-arid region. Birdsville was originally called Diamantina Crossing until officially surveyed in 1885 and became a vital part of a 90-year droving era and an important part of Australia's pastoral history. Burke and Wills also set up Camp 76 in the region on their return from their disastrous transcontinental trek in 1860. Reputedly, a merchant named Matthew Flynn, who carried stores for the stations, built a rough depot on the stock route between Boulia and Adelaide in the late 1870s, where the site of the present town of Birdsville is. Just imagine having to travel nearly 1,600 kilometres from Brisbane to Birdsville with supplies in the late 1800s. What a journey it would have been. Once we had unhooked Gidget, we made our way out to Big Red. The road out surprised me as it was all bitumen until we reached the dune ridge that leads to the Simpson Desert, the largest protected area in Queensland that covers nearly 1 million hectares, and Big Red. Big Red, the name given to a distinct sand dune that stands 40 metres in height, is situated just 35 kilometres from Birdsville and marks the symbolic eastern fringe of the Simpson Desert. The majestic desert landscape is coated in red dust that comes from the small rusting iron particles of the Gibber rocks present throughout the region. The dune is the first on the eastern side of the 1,140 parallel dunes in the Simpson Desert. Though it provides a challenge for many four-wheel drive enthusiasts, Rick and I were content to challenge ourselves just to climb to the top. As it was the middle of the day, the sand was hot and very loose, giving our legs quite a workout. But what an achievement! And the view was spectacular. From the top of Big Red, we looked east, out over a large natural amphitheatre of a dried-out bed of an ancient lake, where the Big Red Bash is held, making it a perfect setting for the Outback Concert, the world's most remote music festival that kicks off under the open skies of Australia's Simpson Desert. The Bash attracts thousands of people from around Australia and the world that head into the desert for this remote music festival. The Simpson Desert the fourth largest Australian desert, lies across the corner of three states, South Australia, Queensland and the Northern Territory. It is largely an uninhabited arid region spanning over 1 million hectares in the arid outback. The desert sits atop the Great Artesian Basin, one of the largest inland drainage areas in the world. Water from the basin rises to the surface at numerous natural springs. The extensive dune fields of the Simpson Desert display a range of colours from brilliant white to dark red and include pinks and oranges. These massive parallel dunes or ridges are between 20 to nearly 40 metres high and 450 metres apart and run northwest to southwest for distances up to 160 kilometres. Ephemeral salt lakes are common throughout the southern sector. On our return to town, we visited the bakery for a late lunch. Wow, the pies we had were unbelievable. I even went back and got a couple more for tea. After such a delicious lunch, we had to walk it off and took our time to visit the information centre, full of outback history, both Indigenous and pioneering. What an amazing and informative visit. The community spirit highlighted in the centre that this region has is truly outstanding. Rick and I have seen this community spirit so often in these outback towns that I often think if only other towns could have the same amount of respect and understanding for all cultures within their community that these towns have. But then again, where else is there such a need to rely on each other regardless of who you are, where everyone works together to make it a community? We spent the afternoon visiting other sites around Birdsville before making our way out past the racing stalls and shelters constructed for the races to the Burke and Wills Tree. The Burke and Wills Tree is located approximately 3 kilometres from Birdsville and is said to mark one of the final campsites before they reach the Innaminka area where the famous Dig Tree stands. On August the 20th, 1860, Robert O'Hara Burke and William John Wills set out from Melbourne to chart a course to the Gulf of Carpentaria, which was the first south-north crossing of Australia. The team of 13 men and 20 camels carried about 20 tons of provisions. Though successful in their quest, both Burke and Wills perished on their return journey. Seeds from the waddy tree found in the diary of Wills verify their passage through the Birdsville region. On returning to Gidget, we relaxed in the shade of the van before going for a late afternoon walk. On our return, with the flies not in any hurry to disappear, we retired inside and enjoyed the peace and quiet of the stunning sunset. What a day it had been. We woke the next morning to the most impressive sunrise, with the morning star still in the sky. Once we had packed up, we made our way back through Birdsville and headed towards Betoota. Our stay in Birdsville, though short, was truly memorable. Our first stop on this leg of our journey was the waddy trees, one of Australia's rarest plants. The waddy tree has a spiky needle-like leaf and thick bark, and piqued early explorer William John Wills's interest, with some samples of the seeds found buried in his diary after his death. The extreme hardiness of waddy wood was put to a number of uses by the local Aboriginals and European settlers. Now a protected species, you can find these trees on the fringes of the Simpson Desert in Queensland and the Northern Territory. On leaving the waddy trees, vast open flood-out country was before us. The scenery was forever changing. We crossed multiple channels with metre-high signage. The area was having a marvellous season, with herbage thick on the flats, thriving shrubs along the waterholes, lots still with water in. We would crest a rise and see for kilometres into the distance. Truly an amazing sight. It disappoints me then when I see what people have left on the side of the road in the middle of properties, with little or no thought to the animals that lived there. We have seen objects placed on frames of signs, toys placed in trees, satellite dishes, fridges, just to name a few. Do they think that it makes it interesting? Surely the vast countryside is interesting enough. Or is it that they have no respect for the area? Would they leave it in their own backyards, I wonder? While travelling this vast outback, I wondered what it would have been like to have a bullock team like my great-grandfather, who delivered stores in the Burnett district, to have lived in this outback area. Such a hard life, not only for the men, but also the women and their families. Located on the road between Betoota and Birdsville, the Karkaroy homestead on the Eyre Development Road was built in 1877 of local limestone by Hector and Norman Wilson. The homestead was positioned near Karkaroy Waterhole and the major stock route through Birdsville. It consisted of two main rooms under a hipped roof. Around the turn of the century, Sir Sidney Kidman took up ownership of the station, comprising 1,000 square miles, but between 1900 and 1903 the region suffered severe drought conditions, with the entire stock of 4,000 bullocks perishing. In 1902, after visiting the station, Kidman decided to close the station down, reputedly allowing the mailman to reside in the homestead for 18 months. When Kidman returned, the place was abandoned and without a roof. In 1936, the property was taken up by Mr. Morton, and today it is part of Rosebirth Station. The homestead ruins, listed by the National Trust, survive as an important link with early European settlement in this region, and as an isolated ruin is demonstrative of the hardships and fickle outback weather experienced by early settlers. Rick and I have lived in some isolated areas of Queensland and the Northern Territory, but we always marvel at the stamina and fortitude these outback pioneers had. Life on the land is never easy even in this day and age, but we have had so much more than those early pioneering families. Thomas Mitchell made the first exploration of the area in which Karkaroy Homestead is located in 1845. Explorers Burke and Wills made further investigations in 1861, and it was while searching for them that extensive exploration of the region was first undertaken. In the 1870s, this region comprised some of the last land taken over by settlers in Queensland. I hope you have enjoyed watching this episode. Join us next time as we continue our journey towards Betoota, stopping at Cutterburra Crossing on Eyre Creek and Hutchison Monument. Take care and stay safe. Cheers for now, Rick and Rosemary. R&R Living Life.